Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how can you best prepare for your IB biology exams. The best way to study for any kind of test or exam is to use practice questions. The reason why is because using practice questions forces your brain to do something called active recall. So what is active recall? Active recall is the process of retrieving information from your brain. This is exactly what you do on a test. So on a test, you'll be presented with a question and you have to search through your mind and find the answer. The best way to study for a situation like that is to do the process of active recall over and over again. This is why scientists agree that performing practiced questions is the best way to study for exams. And maybe I'll do another video about practice questions and active recall and different study strategies. But for now, take my word for it. I'll put some studies in the description to prove what I'm saying. Now, in IB, the best way to make practice questions, as far as I know, is to take command terms, which I discussed in my previous video, and combined these command terms with understanding and application statements from the IB syllabus. So some examples of command terms are define, draw, annotate, describe, outline, and discuss. There are many examples of understanding and application statements to choose from in the IB syllabus. Where do we get these understanding and application statements? Well, for that, we're going to have to go to the IB Biology Guide. This guide contains the syllabus as well as all of the understanding and application / skill statements. This is the format of the IB syllabus. First things you're going to notice is that at the top of every subtopic, you're going to get an essential idea. In this case, the essential idea of subtopic 1.2 is that eukaryotes have a much more complex cell structure than prokaryotes. This is just giving you the kind of guiding main idea of what they're going for here. You're going to want to focus on the understandings, the applications and skills, and the guidance. These are really the only things they can test you on in exams, and the guidance is meant to help students kind of navigate these understandings and applications. You can pretty much just ignore nature of science, international mindedness, all this other stuff. An understanding is a statement of knowledge that you have to know for each subtopic. In other words, this section will provide specifics of the content required for each subtopic. For example, in subtopic 1.2, which discusses the ultrastructure of cells, you're going to have to know that prokaryotes have a simple cell structure, and that means that they do not have compartmentalization. Now, in order to successfully answer a question about subtopic 1.2, you're going to have to know what a prokaryote is, what does it mean to have a simple cell structure, and what is this? Like, what is that? So to be able to answer these questions, you'll have to understand all of the information in the understanding section. Next up, we have applications and skills. This is when they take those understandings and apply them. So for example, here you can see that the first application is to understand the structure and function of organelles, and then specifically within exocrine gland cells of the pancreas and within palisade mesophyll cells of the leaf. And then we also get skills. So in this case, we're going to have to be able to draw the ultrastructure of a prokaryotic cell based on an electron micrograph. And then same thing for a eukaryotic cell. So this is a very important thing to know, right? So as you're going through the syllabus, using this as a tool to understand what you need to know and what you have to be able to apply and what skills do you have to know to be successful in an exam. So the guidance section is useful because it will provide you with specifics and give constraints to the requirements for the understandings and applications of skills. So for example, it tells you that, when you're drawing a prokaryotic cell, you have to draw the cell wall, right? Pili and flagella, as well as the plasma membrane enclosing cytoplasm that contains 70 S ribosomes and a nucleoid with naked DNA. So that's what you have to do when you draw a prokaryotic cell. And that's actually really helpful to know, because when you talk about prokaryotic cells, there are a lot of things that you could draw, but IB specifies that this is what they want you to know. Same thing when talking about eukaryotic cells. So this is why the guidance section is so useful. This overall format is going to repeat for every single subtopic within the IB syllabus, which is why having a copy of this thing is so important. So now I've prepared a list of command terms and some randomly selected understanding / application / skill statements from the IB syllabus. We're going to start by matching command terms to a understanding statement. So we're going to do this by just dragging over, for example, here's the word define, and then I'm going to bring over, I think I'm going to take the evolution one, it's the first on the list, let's do this. So we want to be able to define, and then the statement says evolution occurs, so let me bring out my pointer here. The statement says evolution occurs when the heritable characteristics of a species change. Well, to turn this into a practice question, and the command term being define, all you have to do is this. Define evolution. And then the answer is evolution occurs when the heritable characteristics of a species change. Or it could be, evolution is the change in allele frequency over time. And that would just be enough, because all you have to do is define. I think we're going to go with outline. So outline is a pretty good practice question command term to use, because they're very general and it requires you to remember a lot about the understanding statement. And I think I'm going to go with the question about hormones and the menstrual cycle, because this is a very tricky question that a lot of the students that I work with have a lot of questions about. So it's probably good to have a decent practice question about outlining all the hormones involved. We have our command term here, which is outline, and then some of the buzzwords in here that we're going to have to attune to here is the menstrual cycle controlled by negative and positive feedback mechanisms involving ovarian and pituitary hormones. So using these key words here, we can make our practice question. I want to focus on the hormones because those are the trickiest parts usually. So maybe outline the role of hormones. Outline the role of hormones in the menstrual cycle. This is a solid question because now we have to know all of the different menstrual cycle hormones like FSH, LH, all this stuff. And then we also have to know ovarian and pituitary hormones. And then we also would have to talk about the negative and positive feedback mechanisms involved. And this would be a huge question, probably worth, I don't know, maybe 8 points. It would probably be one of the big 8-point questions in the paper too. So this is a very, very good practice question because it really forces you to dig into this command term. All right, so I think we'll do one more. We're going to go with describe. So describe, again, it's another one of those general command terms that are really great for practicing with. And I'm also going to go with the action potential because this is also, I find a lot of people are confused about the action potential and all the underlying movements of ions and all of that stuff. So I think talking about the action potential is a very good thing to do. So what would this question look like? Well, we have to describe, but then we have to ask ourselves, what is the most important thing that we have to be able to describe here? So we know that an action potential consists of depolarization and repolarization of the neuron. So we could talk about describing the different phases of an action potential. We could also describe what causes those phases. So for example, describe the phases of an action potential. This question implies that we'll have to talk about ions and the membrane voltage and all this great stuff. So again, this is another one of those great questions because these two things can be very confusing for students. So being able to describe what happens during an action potential in a neuron is very, very useful. And there you have it, everybody. That was how to create great practice questions using only command terms and the IB syllabus. Now you'll have a list of practice questions that you can just use anytime you feel like studying. Instead of having to flip through the entire textbook, you can just go down your list of practice problems and see what you know and what you don't know.